Welcome to Focus on Business, a podcast show for photographers with me, your host, Jane Goodrich. I'm talking to successful photographers so you can learn from our experiences and have the business of your dreams. So join us and let's focus on business. All right, today on the show, I am really excited, and I know you guys will be too, because we have Nathan Chanski here. And if you haven't heard of him, where have you been? Because I've heard of him. I've been following for a while, a little bit of a stalker, but not really a stalker. Sorry, Nathan. But amazing photographer, weddings, elopements, but he's also such a great educator in our industry. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a privilege to be here, and I'm so excited to be here.
Did I embarrass you? I'm sorry.
No, not at all. That was such a nice intro. My gosh.
Well, I don't like reading everyone's bio. It seems so boring.
I don't do it either.
And so I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to tell you what I
shoot
think
from the
of you.
hip.
So yeah, okay. But tell our audience, if they have been living under a rock and haven't found you, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am from the US. I live in Michigan, which is like the Mitten state. And I am a photographer. That's how I started. That's how I kind of got into entrepreneurship, is I started photographing weddings and couples. And I absolutely love doing that. And it was about a couple years in that I realized that my business was not something that was doing very well. You know, I was a great creative, but I wasn't actually doing a great job making money. And I had a lot of mindset issues around money. I had a lot of issues even around what I thought business was and wasn't. So it really forced me to learn business. It forced me to learn how to make money and be profitable, even as a creative, even as a very right-brained person. It forced me how to use the other side of my brain. It forced me how to be consistent, how to be disciplined, how to learn business principles. So what that kind of brought me to was educating other people on how to do those things too. And so that's what I love to do. I love to help people take their creative passion, not be the starving artist, and make money, make abundant wealth at what they're doing as a creative, their passion. And so that's mainly what I do a lot of now is I coach. I help photographers get to their first 6 figures per year and beyond. And then I also do podcasts that I do to kind of give people more of a free education experience. And then I also, I'm on social media a lot as well, content creation. So that's kind of the basis of what I do, and I love it.
Yeah, no, that's really key. Similar things to what I'm trying to do. I think we do struggle as photographers, even creative entrepreneurs, to really think about it's a business versus, it's just my art. And you don't actually have to be a starving artist, right? At all. I'm sort of the anomaly. I have an MBA, so I have the business principles. I have the marketing. I work for a big ad agency for 10 years in Chicago. But I struggle, right? So I have that and I struggle. And I remember one time someone hired me for a family shoot, and it was really to only take photos of their kids to give to a portrait artist to paint them, for a painter. And I was, what? You're paying $1,500 for me to go photograph your family for then somebody to actually go paint them. And I looked at this woman's work and she valued herself. She was a gorgeous artist. It was between $8,000 to $12,000 for a painting of a photograph of your child. It is doable. And so for me, I was like, wow, she's doing it. But we should all be thriving artists, because at the end of the day, what is there without art? Right?
Exactly.
It'd just be such a boring life, if you
exactly. And I think the value of it is subjective to each person. And so it's a lot of what I like to teach people is if you are stuck with people who don't value art, then find new people, because there are people who will value it and pay high prices for it, especially if you are able to sell them in a winsome way and even contribute to their mindset on the value of art. And you can change everything in that way. You don't have to, like you said, you don't have to be that starving artist. You can be thriving. One
of the things that's interesting is it's hard. We also, you even talk about finding your ideal client and demographic and this, but for me, and I have clients, I'm in an actual wealthy area. And so you'd think, oh, wow, I can charge a lot. Actually, my clients are not the richest clients. They aren't. They're the normal, let's say normal, typical people, but they just love photography and they value photography. And so you can't put an income on that. Like one woman, the husband was a stay-at-home dad, the 3 kids, she lived in an apartment, and she was the single breadwinner, and she booked 4 sessions with me a year.
Wow.
Yeah. I went to her house one time I was doing in-home newborn at the time, like 3rd kid. I was like, my work is everywhere. And she just is like, yes, I love it. I love your work. And I was like, wow. And so it's also hard to, like pinpoint with an ad, right? You know what I mean? Like with a Facebook ad, it's like somebody that values photography, you don't know it, but like you have to be able to appeal to that person that loves photography. And it might not be income. It really might not be.
Absolutely.
You kind of mentioned a little bit, and I think I sort of know the answer. Like if you were to travel back in time to when you first started your business in photography, would you do anything differently?
Yes, I absolutely would. I'm definitely one of those people who I believe that everything happens for a purpose. And like the fact that I was able to go through the struggles that I was able to go through, it makes me a better coach and it helps me relate to people who are at those places. And I know what they're going through, but what I think I would have mainly done differently is I think I would have really invested myself into educating myself on things that I didn't know. There are certain people that I think, whether it's like business or money mindset or sales psychology or whatever it is, some of that can come more naturally to certain people than to other people. For instance, like sales or like relating to people. Some people are just very extroverted and have like an amazing way with people. And it's just like a natural gifting. But I think there are certain situations where you don't have a natural gifting in some of these areas. For me, I wasn't one of those people who had a natural gifting in especially the business side of things. And so I wish I would have applied myself to educating myself more and to learning from people who had done things that were wildly better than what I had ever done before. And I'm not even talking just in the photography industry, but just all the business books and the podcasts and the conversations that I had with people and even like courses that I was able to take and everything. Just being able to absorb as much as I possibly could from people who had done things before me and then be like, okay, let's actually take the action on these things now. Because I know for the first couple, like at least the first year and a half, I did not really take any sort of education during that time. I had come from taking education in college and having like a business degree and all of that. And so I felt a little bit jaded by education, I think. Maybe it was like a subconsciousness of being jaded, but I didn't put myself in a place where I was the student again. And so I really was set back, I think, by that because I just refused to. Again, maybe it was like a subconscious thing. I refused to believe that someone else knew more than I did and that I should like give up so much of my time to learn from them or give up so much of my money to learn from them. And it really held me back. So I'd say that is probably one of the biggest things I would do differently is I would start learning earlier, start getting educated earlier.
So I will give yourself a little bit of a break on that, Nathan, because I think we have this idea of schooling being in 4 walls, being like, okay, well,
Totally.
I'm kind of done. I've done the box. I went to college, but schooling continues through life in whatever facet, learning, like lifelong learning. And I love the fact that you bring that up because, even if you did have an MBA, I needed to learn sales. I needed to learn a ton of stuff about a small business. Like, I didn't just check it off the box that everybody thinks that you do of like, I've got a degree, check. I have to do 0 learning the rest of my life.
Yep.
It's continuous. Like, even if you're not in an entrepreneurial job, like even if you're on a 9-to-5 job, you're still learning, right? You're always going to be learning in training and stuff. And I think that actually is a shock to some people. Actually, I concepted a little book for kids during COVID because I fundamentally believe that children can learn anywhere and it doesn't have to be within the 4 walls of a school. But then that sort of started conversations of like, well, why do we think learning stops at college or high school? Always learn. So just embracing that mindset of lifelong learning I love it. I think that's fantastic. I like this. I like this question. If you're like, where are you now? Michigan? You're right. Yeah,
Yes.
Michigan. All right, I'm going to give you a fun place. All right, so you have to move to Nashville in 3 months. I mean, we know we have a
Okay.
coaching, which is sort of, global, but, your wedding business, if you were moving to Nashville in 3 months, what would you do? What would be the first thing that you would do?
This is a great question. I love this question because I think so many people go through it. So now let me ask you this. Do you want me to answer it from the perspective of I want to book destination work, or I want to book local to Nashville work instead of local to Michigan work?
All right, so if you're more destination, then it probably doesn't really matter. So let's do local to
Right.
Nashville. You want all those
I like
Nashville
that.
brides. Yeah, I'm
Yep,
gonna go harder for you.
absolutely. I know, I like that. Because the thing is, some people, they move and they're like, oh, what should I do? And I'm like, well, you're a destination photographer, so I guess it doesn't matter as much because you're just like moving to a different place, but you're going to be traveling the same amount. So what I would do if it was a local situation where I wanted to book locally, I think the first things I would do is I would take trips there very regularly. I think getting my butt in the actual geographical location that I want to be booking in is very, very important. Obviously, there are things that I could do digitally, right? I could change my social media titles so that they are SEO friendly to Nashville, so that maybe my, Instagram name says Nashville wedding photographer, right? And I would do that and I would start putting the hashtags in, Nashville wedding photographer, like Nashville bride, Nashville weddings, Nashville planner, whatever. And I think that can help geotagging Nashville, all that kind of stuff. But I think getting my actual physical body in the places where I want to be shooting and, like getting connected as much as I possibly can, I'd probably go and set up per time I took a trip there, 3 different styled shoots. And hopefully they would be, if I'm specifically targeting wedding, I would probably have them be wedding shoots. If I could, I would want to make sure and get in with wedding venues, especially because a lot of times people will book a venue before they actually book a photographer. So if I can get in with a venue and actually be like, hey, I'm coming down. I'd love to do this shoot in your space. I think you have a beautiful space. I'd love to provide you all the content, maybe even, any print products that you want to showcase in your, I don't know, in your foyer for your clients or something like that. And then I'd want to shake their hand. I'd want to actually give them like a personal business card. Maybe I'd bring a gift with me along with my visit to them. I think just creating that in-person relationship would be very key. The other thing I would probably do is I'd ask for wedding planners to collaborate with me on these shoots, and maybe even secondary vendors like florists, maybe people who would be more in like the stationery creating space, or, kind of other people, cake decorators, anything like that, so that I could work with as many people as I possibly could. And again, I think the physical aspect is really key, because when you get in those spaces with people, I think they can now realize who you are as a person. They put a face to the name. They can like feel your energy. They can see how you walk, how you carry yourself, how you dress, how you show up, when you show up. Are you late? Are you early?
Are you nice?
Are you staying? You know what I mean? Like little things like that that we don't give a lot of credit for, I think go a long way. And I also like to tell people that for every one good, solid in-person connection you have that's willing to vouch for you, your character, your brand, I think it's worth probably like 100 or maybe even 500 digital connections, because they can connect you so much better, and they're willing to vouch for you so much better than if you just did everything digitally. So I think that's really what I would do, and I'd probably do that multiple times, honestly, and get again my physical body in those locations. And then like I'm somebody who, I'm a Christian, so like I'd probably be attending some churches there and try to get well connected there in person with just a community and have people know my name. I tell them, hey, I'm moving to Nashville. I'm a wedding photographer and I need help. I need your help to help me get bookings here. If you know of anybody, let me know. And I'd actually share a little bit of that vulnerability with them. Hey, I have no bookings yet. I would love it if you knew of anybody, because I think people like to get behind that.
Right.
They're like, oh yeah, let me help you out. Like if I know of anybody, let me think of somebody, let me text this person, whatever. And I think I just keep doing that. I'd honestly probably go to, I'm giving you the kitchen sink. I'd probably go to coffee shops and I would just sit at coffee shops. I'd probably be, all right, Nate, you're going to introduce yourself to like 5 different people that you don't know yet. And you're just going to introduce yourself, ask them what they're doing on their laptop. You tell them what you're doing. Again, give the vulnerability pitch of like, hey, I'm moving to Nashville. I'm a wedding photographer. Like, here's my work. I have no bookings. If you know of anybody, I would love it if you could refer me to them. Meet as many people that way. Just keep doing that as many times as I could. I maybe would even go hard on the SEO front as well, because I think that's also really important too, just to make sure that you have some sort of like Google searchability. But the only thing about SEO is like SEO is more of a long game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it would take some time. You might not get immediate results.
The in-person connection versus the digital, I mean, it's so key. You know, even for headshot photographers, well, meeting the realtors that need it or meeting the person. I do like the tip of going to a coffee shop and be editing gorgeous images and someone's going to talk to you. Like, even if you're shyer and you don't, but like someone's going to connect. But the vulnerability piece of like needing help, you remind me, I read this book before the pandemic and I was recommending it to any business owner like crazy. Unfortunately, the name is called Contagious, right? So now it's like an awful name, but it was such a changing book that I read, but it's by Jonah Berger and I can put it in the show notes. But what it said was you want to get your brand advocates. I mean, I had a whole referral program. It worked fine, but they want to help you as a human being. Right? Yeah. People want to help people. And so that mindset shifted. And I remember I must have been right around when I had my daughter and I was like, oh, wow, this is more expensive than I thought having a kid. So I couldn't do as much on Google Ads. And so I just was like, you know, I'd really appreciate if you could refer me because, you know, making me anxious that I'm not spending as much money on Google Ads now because of my kid. And oh my gosh, people are like, yeah. I mean, there were some people that just ignored my email, right? But
that's fine.
The people that are connectors that love it. I mean, I'm one of those. I'm like Malcolm Gladwell's connectors. I'm like going to connect you. I might not be able to do anything.
Me
like,
too.
I love it. I love it. You know, and I'll do it sort of unsolicited. I mean, even stuff like advice. I'm like, oh, my friend said she got poison ivy. Okay, well, I had poison ivy, so I'm going to send her a recommendation of what I bought on Amazon. And she's like, yeah, I already have it, Jane. I'm like, sorry, you know. But and the same thing with like, well, you need to meet this person because that person. I can't do any of it. And some people were like, oh, you should be mayor of our town. I'm like, no. I can't deal with politics. I just like connecting. So you need to find those people. And it's hard in a new town, but sitting in a coffee shop with someone that's curious about what you're editing and you being open to being vulnerable. I mean, and that is not a bad thing. I remember coming in 2010 and I'm just like, anybody that I met, I mean, I basically used my sister's kids as sort of being at the playground. I'm like playing them. Yeah, I'm a kids photographer, just moved here. Do you want any photo shoots? You know, like swinging him on the swing.
Exactly.
Why not?
Exactly. Well, and I even think too, obviously, I don't want to negate the fact that there is a level of vulnerability that I think is almost like too much. Like I've seen,
please hire me.
Like I've seen people post, I've seen other photographers and they'll post a reel that's basically like, I have no bookings, like things are so bad, And I'm like, well, maybe let's not make a viral reel about that because you don't maybe want every single human being out there knowing that you're desperate. That's not a good look. But there are situations like you're saying where you can talk individually, person to person with somebody who, I mean, they're not like a potential client, but they know a potential client. And I think they hear your ability to be vulnerable and open and honest. And I think there's this something like innate within us as humans where we all are like, well, I've been there too, where I needed somebody. So I want to help them. I feel like it'd take a pretty crappy person to I don't want to help you. You know what I mean? It's like, and those people, fine. Like you said, like the emails that didn't get responded to, who cares? But there are going to be people who are going to be like, oh, you have this goal. I love that. Like, let me help you. And I will even say, when you're in a place of weakness on your rise to success, you have this very unique ability to get people on your bandwagon that actually stops when you start succeeding. Because when you start succeeding, a lot of people don't want to help you anymore. People are like threatened by you. So I'm like, hey, if you are struggling right now, jump on that opportunity to let people help you because you're probably not going to get that opportunity once you start winning. people will shut their doors
Right.
at that point.
Yeah. And it's also like you probably won't really need them at that point, right? So it's
Right.
like,
Yeah, maybe not.
I actually see that a lot too. But it's like, okay, so say you haven't moved and you've been trying your business for like 2 years. You can use this vulnerability, but I agree, do not blast it to everybody because it sort of is quite negative. But it's like, okay, what about going to the local chamber? And if you're in the US, there's a lot of small business help. There's SCORE mentors for free.
Yep.
There's education, but like an in-person meeting with somebody or another business owner that's in your ideal market. Maybe you don't have to be vulnerable, but you can start making the relationship and being like, you know what? I'm trying to get into newborn photography. I've been a family photographer. I'm getting newborn photography. Do you know anybody pregnant women? What do you think I should do? And ask them an opinion. So it's like, hey, what do you think?
Yep. I love that.
And 10 years into it, you can have a best friend that you're complaining about your clients to in the local market. I mean, like, just at the end of the day, I'm just kidding. If my clients are listening, no, I love you all. I'm just kidding. Seasonality for weddings. So let's take you back to when you were only doing weddings, right? And not being a business coach. Like the seasonality of Michigan, I'm assuming, and you're a little bit of destination as well. Did you
every once in a while?
Yeah. Did you have any seasonality to your business?
Absolutely. Yep. You're in New York, right?
Yeah. I lived in Chicago, so I don't know where you are.
So you know exactly. I'm right up in Grand Rapids, so I'm like 2.5 hours away from Chicago, and it's definitely a spring, summer, fall season, but emphasis on like the months of May to October.
Yeah.
I don't get out after November to November to March, but sometimes even April. I'm like, I'm not even going to touch my camera because a lot of times it's just really, really cold and people don't. I mean, I used to shoot back then, even in the winter, but I've learned I don't do it as much. But yes, we do have a season is what I'm saying to answer your question.
Yeah. And so was that a shock to you at first of like, oh gosh, now I have no money in November? Or how do you cope with that?
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't think so because I mean, I do think there are certain people who I guess they maybe live paycheck to paycheck and they're in a situation where basically they don't realize that you have to balance out your spending for the whole year and you can't just like spend what you were given on a given month. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a feast or famine type situation. And so I think what I struggled with more was a situation where it was like, you don't specifically know what you're going to be making year to year in many senses. This was back when like, I feel like the business model strategies were not at the forefront of my mind and I didn't really know what I was doing. And so, yeah, back then it was, okay, I made this much this year, but I don't know what I'm going to make next year. What if my bookings just fall off? So I think that was the biggest frustration or pain point there of just, I don't know what could happen next year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I think we see it a lot with more of the family photographers. You know, you get into it in September and you're like, woohoo, this is amazing. I'm really busy.
Totally.
And then you're like, it drops off and it'll probably drop off until fall, you know, so that's what's hard about it. And I've been doing this 14 years now. So I know that basically 70% of my business is in 3 months of the year. That's a lot. If I spend that, you know, like I need to get through December, January, February, March, even April. I don't like being outside and being cold. I mean, I try to de-seasonalize my business with newborns and with headshots, but
those are more inside, right?
Yeah. No, I'm not doing newborns outside. But I still I like mid-October, don't like being outside. Nope. It's too cold for me.
I'm the same way. And I've even found that back what I was saying about like me not doing winter shoots anymore, I would have situations where I would go out and do like these snowy sessions with people, but I am someone who likes to shoot for 2 hours, even on a portrait session with a couple. And so here's the thing, you get 45 minutes in to a session in the snow and you're done. Like the couple, like even if I'm feeling great as the photographer, the couple is so visibly uncomfortable. Their face is literally frozen and they're stiff and they're just, can we be done? And so I just got to the point where I was like, this doesn't feel to me like an exceptional experience that I promise everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna nah, I just kind of put the kibosh on the winter shoots.
Yeah.
Unless people do it in a studio.
I always think, oh, when it snows, I'm going to do this gorgeous shoot outside with my kid. And I'm like, yeah, no.
They're overrated.
And then I'm like, it's freezing out. And then also when it's snowing, can't really go out. You know what I mean? Like, so because it's going to get all over it. One time I did a shoot, someone from my parents' magazine, she was like, oh, it's going to be snowing right now. Can you like take photos? And I thought it'd be clever to tell my nephew at the time, I'm like, go ahead, throw a snowball. Cause I thought it'd be great to try and capture that. A kid throwing a snowball. He hit it right in my lens.
Oh no.
He didn't break it, but I'm done. I'm not even doing this.
A little ice in there.
Why did you ask him that? I mean, he was like 3. Who thought he had a really good arm? And he was far away. Anyway, that was funny.
Live and learn.
I think also like when you do family shoots and like you have that first cold spell in the fall, kids think it's like 10 degrees outside. It's so cold to them because their body's not used to it. They're not wrapped up in it. And then they're freezing. They're so cold. I'm so cold. And I just, can I be done with my season before that first cold spell? Because kids are miserable. And I don't want that on a shoot. So, what is the funniest thing that happened on a shoot? Or the worst thing or the best thing?
Well, so I will tell this story. I worry that this story is a you had to be there kind of situation.
No, tell us.
It was funny. It was funny to me, but I don't know if it'll be that funny telling it. So in Michigan, we basically have beaches. We have beautiful beaches. And then that means also we have these awesome dunes and these bluffs. And it's really cool. So I love to shoot on these beaches and on these dunes. But there was one situation where I was just being the normal photographer that I was, or the crazy photographer that I was, I guess, and getting all of the angles. And this couple was in their moment. And I completely misjudged my footing on the edge of kind of like, I don't know if it was like a full bluff, but it was a dune that had quite a sharp drop off. And so I just had misjudged the edge and my footing. And so I'm like trying to get this angle. The sand from under me just completely went down, and I went down, and I went like head first down into like a massive sand dune. And that was humbling. It was very humbling, but it was hilarious. Honestly, I was laughing. My couple was so concerned about me. They're like, are you well? Like, are you okay? Can you finish the shoot? And they kept asking me, they're like, no, but are you okay? Yeah. And I was like, yes, it was sand. I'm fine. But it was pretty
What about your camera though, man?
Yeah, she took a nosedive directly in the sand, like directly in the sand. So I had to clean that out, and she still works. What do you know?
So more like an embarrassing moment for you. I remember I did a shoot, it was a family shoot, that repeat client. I knew them very well. There was 3 boys, and I was trying to get the boys to laugh. So I was pretending to fall. Sometimes that'll crack them up. Except this one time, I actually did fall. I mean, it worked. They got some, but I really did fall. And I was like, ow, ow, ow. And I was like, all right, just keep going. We're near the end of the shoot. I just was like, okay, well, it really hurts. My ankle really hurts. It's like, you'll be fine. Just get over it. Right. Then I had to drive into the city for another shoot, but it was an indoor shoot at a recital. There was no air in the, people, like families or anything like that. So I ended up passing out on my shoot. No. And then they're like, what happened? And luckily that client, I've photographed their family for like, now it's 50 times, but at the time it was like 20. So they knew me, and they were like, are you okay? And the videographer was there. I knew him. And I was like, oh, well, I twisted my ankle earlier. I took off my shoe and it swelled up so much. I couldn't even drive home. And he was like, but it was really mortifying because everyone's like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine. I just hurt my ankle. I still can shoot. It was so embarrassing. But yeah.
Oh, that's the worst. Well, sometimes we don't take care of ourselves as well as we should, which is so bad. We need to take care of ourselves. But there was one time I felt like I was going to pass out because I hadn't drank any water, or it was just a really hot day or something like that. And I was just like, okay, I have to, like, even if this is semi-unprofessional, to be like, hey, we got to stop and I have to go get water. Like, it's going to be way worse if I don't, and then I pass out.
It's like embarrassing, but I have a tendency to pass out anyway, but not really in those situations. I've never passed out. I was so embarrassed, but yeah. So you can have funny stories on shoots, and they hired me again, both families. So
There you go. They
yeah,
must have loved something.
yeah. Maybe they just think they've got some comedy act,
There you go.
as a
Yeah.
photographer. Like, and it comes with sideshow, sideshow Bob, whatever. Okay, so what is the one tip that you would give to a new photographer that comes to you, Nathan, I need coaching, but I just need one tip. Like, I'm starting my photography business.
Interesting. Oh, there's so many different
I
ones that
know,
I could give. I'll just pick a random one. So one thing that I think is really important when you are first starting out is to just be photographing. There's many photographers. I think this is perpetuated by a mentality on social media, or even just like a narrative on social media, that you can kind of like, you can build a massive business easy and it doesn't take any hard work. And if you would just figure out like this tiny little trick, it would save you and make you $100,000 overnight. And I don't subscribe to that. I think especially in the education space, that is really promoted because it can make sales. And I'm not telling people that. I'm not telling people that I'm just going to make them overnight success with them doing nothing. That's not true. That doesn't happen. And so I think it's really important for people to get back to the fundamentals and the basics of being about the business that you say you do. If you are a hairstylist, you need to be actively styling people's hair. I don't care how you do it, how much people are paying or not paying you to do it. Got to be doing it. Be actively doing it. If you are a gym trainer, you need to be actively training people at the gym and getting people results at the gym. So many people will start these businesses and they will forget the doing part of the job, and they'll just sit behind their computer or their phone and post on social media and create a website and wait. And then it's like, no, you've got to be doing the job. You have to be doing the work. Back to your word contagious. That's what's contagious to other people, or even magnetic to other people. That's what's magnetic to other people, is they're like, okay, you're working with so many people. I want to be one of them. I want to be part of the party that you are creating. I want to be invited to it.
Yeah.
And no one wants to go to a party where no one's actually partying and no one's invited. Boring. That's scary. That's creepy. They want to come to something that's already existent. So be about the business of doing. That's honestly one of the biggest tips I'd give to someone starting out.
Yeah. And if it's also doing, so if it is like, okay, well, I want to quit my full-time job to do this. Well, treat it like a full-time job.
Yeah.
Whether it's doing in terms of shooting or meeting people, and it is treating it like I'm going to work 40 hours. I mean, I'll be real. When I first started out, it was 90, 100 hours a week. I was
100%.
nonstop. Like, it was all my business. My hindsight is like, I wish that I had another year of a full-time job before I went crazy. Yeah, I do, because I feel like...
Why do you say that?
Oh, because I did it really quickly. I took basically a day class in January of 10, maybe. Then I did some portfolio shoots. Then I quit my day job in June. But I quit prior to having my workflow done. Then I moved, right? So I could have moved and like kept my job, but had done it out of New York. But I would have worked on my website. I would have worked on social media profiles. At that point, probably there was just Facebook, but I would have worked on SEO. I would have worked on my workflow from start to finish with the client. I would have gotten all of that stuff. And then I could have focused on the marketing side and building the relationships when I ripped the band. And I would have probably started to do that too. So I just think I should have taken a little bit more time. And I was lucky in the fact that I was able to have some income to support me from my savings, right? Not many people do. And so then you get into the scarcity mindset because you can't pay your bills. So it's kind of like, and then you sort of do lower prices and it doesn't help long term. So if you can give up, have at least 6 months of savings or something like that, then fine, you can do it. But it's going to take a while. And that's one thing that I think takes a lot longer to get going than people think.
The beginning of their business, you mean?
Yeah.
Totally. I always tell people, don't attach your willingness to do something by how long it's going to take you. Because if you're telling me that you're only going to do something for, let's say, 3 months, or 6 months. And if you don't get the result you want to see in like that soon, that it's not worth it to you anymore. Oh, well, just give up now then. Seriously. Because the thing is, especially when it comes to running your own business, it ain't easy. Like, it's not hard. It's not for the faint of heart. Like, that's why I feel like most of the world just goes and gets a corporate job that someone else is the entrepreneur for.
Right.
But the thing is like, if you do choose the entrepreneurial lifestyle, you have to understand that you do it until it works. And it will. If you never quit, like it will work. But the fact of the matter is like, you have to dedicate yourself to it as long as it takes. It's not like I only dedicate myself to as long as my expectation. If I were to say, hey, you can be a 6-figure photographer, it's going to take you an entire year to get there. Some people I feel would be, oh, well, I don't want it then, right? Why? Like, if it were to take you a month, you do it.
Right.
Like, that doesn't, you know what I'm saying? So it's like,
you're not gonna,
dedicate yourself to the long term, to the long game, because life is long. Like, you can have this business supporting you for like decades if you wanted it to. And so the fact of the matter is, like, if something takes you like a year to build, totally worth it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I also think if you were to go in your job and the expectations of like, hey, I'm going to make this in a year, you'd likely take it. But it's also
exactly
for me, when I mentioned about, I would have probably still worked 40 hours on my business and probably 60 hours on my day job just to build it. But I ripped off the band. I was a little bit impulsive. It's my ADHD. But I think that like, and now I see it with photographers of like, you know, I had a baby. I'm not going to go back to work. I'm going to do this. I'm like, this is not going to replace anything. And for a while, unless you're going to invest in this, and this, because everyone makes it look so easy. We do.
Right.
I will say we do. It's the end product, right? You're not going to show the graft. I have to have a meeting with my accountant. My poor accountant, I talk about him way too much. But, you know, like we're not going to go behind the scenes of what it really takes to run a business. If you think of yourself like a small business, like, okay, I live in a town of like 2,500 people and I'm going to open up a photography business. So I'm going to become a photographer that actually is just exactly like the photographer we have in town. And I'm not going to shoot anywhere else around. You're like, you're going to go out of business. Starbucks wouldn't do that. Like they wouldn't open a location in that. So like you have to think outside the box and think like a business. So like
a big business, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be a big business. So
yeah, I tell people that. I'm like, think like a big business.
Yeah.
We're in the small business mentality of like, oh, you're doing that the little way and like doing it, you know, and I'm like, no, think like a big business. And what kind of decisions would you make if you were in a big business role? You know what I'm saying? A big business isn't going to DIY their website and make it work. A big business is going to contract it out, get an expert to create something exceptional, and then they put it live. A big business isn't going to half butt their branding headshots. No. They're going to get beautiful headshots that are professionally shot, executed. We're so caught in this mentality of cut corners, as few subscriptions as possible. You know, I'm a small business, and it keeps you small. That's what's sad about that, is that like it keeps you so small when you think that way.
It's funny, my husband, his family is a window cleaning business since like 1929. Their mentality is not small. It's not cheap. Here's the deal. It's not cutting corners. Because I think some big businesses can cut corners too. But,
100%.
But like I came from working in advertising. You know what? I'm a brand. I'm gonna start my business. And so like I did hire getting a website done. And I spent stupid amounts of money on advertising. What it was $10,000. I got sucked into a contract for a back page, full page spread of like a free parents magazine. Like, no, do not do that. No, it was the right audience, but I got calls for donations and advertising something else. But I still always had the mindset of treating my business like a brand. And granted, that was a mistake, but also you live and learn. Like that's the only way that you're going to know what's going to work for your business. Like what works for me might not work for somebody as a family photographer in Michigan. Right. So this has been amazing. And I just absolutely loved our conversation. So thank you, Nathan. We will put all how people can find you in the show notes and the details, but like,
sweet.
You can tell us how to find you and on whatever your favorite podcast. I mean, I do listen to your podcast. I'm a little bit, I'm obsessed with your podcast. So, but yeah, tell us how they can find you.
Honestly, that's where I'd point you. My podcast is Passion with Purpose. I talk about everything from how to make more money, how to like heal your mindset. I bring in a lot of experts in the industry. That's where I'd point everybody. Just to come listen to my podcast, Passion with Purpose. If you have an Instagram account and you like to follow people on Instagram, I post on Instagram as well at Nathan Chanski. But yeah, that's where I'd go.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on here, Nathan. I really, I really appreciate it. Finally get to meet you.
You are so welcome. It's been such a pleasure to be here and chat with you.